The bank said I owed $987,000. Then I found out my sister had been living my life. I was 31 years old when I walked into the bank and discovered that my entire life had been stolen. Not figuratively, not emotionally, legally. My name is Emma Carter, and until that Tuesday morning, I believed my biggest problem was figuring out how to keep my small graphic design business alive after losing several major clients. I needed a business loan, just $25,000, enough to survive another 6 months. Instead, I learned that, according to the bank, I already owed $987,000, nearly $1 million. I laughed when the loan officer told me. Actually laughed, because it sounded ridiculous. There had to be some mistake. The woman across the desk didn't laugh back. She simply turned her computer screen toward me. "Ms. Carter," she said carefully, "these loans are attached to your Social Security number." My stomach dropped. 3 loans. 1 mortgage. Several business credit lines. A luxury vehicle financing agreement. Total debt, $987,143.22. I stared at the screen, unable to breathe, unable to think, unable to understand. "That's impossible." The loan officer frowned. "These accounts have been active for years. Years. Years." My hands started shaking. I had never owned a house, never bought a luxury car, never taken a business loan larger than $10,000. I lived in a modest apartment, drove a 7-year-old Honda, counted every dollar. Yet somehow I was supposedly living a completely different life. A very expensive one. The bank manager joined us 20 minutes later. Then security. Then fraud investigators. The situation quickly became serious, because every document appeared legitimate. Every signature matched mine. Every identification number belonged to me. Every account traced back to my identity. Yet none of it was mine. I spent 6 hours at the bank that day. 6 hours trying to prove I wasn't myself. When I finally left, I felt sick, exhausted, terrified, and completely confused. Then one investigator asked a question that changed everything. "Ms. Carter, has anyone in your family ever had access to your personal documents?" Family. The word hit me like a punch, because suddenly I remembered something. Years ago, when I was 21, my mother had asked to keep copies of my birth certificate and Social Security card, just in case. Family records. Emergency purposes. At the time, it seemed normal. Now it didn't. I drove straight to my parents' house, 2 hours away. Without calling. Without warning. Without thinking. The entire drive, my heart pounded harder and harder. Because a horrible possibility was beginning to form. A possibility so ugly that I didn't want to believe it. My younger sister Olivia. The golden child. The favorite. The one who could do no wrong. The one my parents had spent their entire lives protecting. Even when she didn't deserve it. Especially when she didn't deserve it. Olivia was 28. Beautiful. Charismatic. Manipulative. And permanently irresponsible. Growing up, she never faced consequences. If she failed a class, the teacher was blamed. If she crashed a car, the road was blamed. If she got fired, her boss was blamed. Nothing was ever Olivia's fault. Ever. Meanwhile, I worked for everything. Scholarships. Jobs. Savings. Independence. I left home at 18 and built my own life. Olivia stayed. And stayed. And stayed. Living off my parents while chasing one business scheme after another. Every few years, she'd announce some amazing opportunity. A startup, a boutique, a real estate venture, a luxury event company. Each one failed. Each one cost money. Each one somehow became everyone else's responsibility. When I arrived at my parents' house, Olivia's Mercedes sat in the driveway. A brand new Mercedes. One she'd claimed was leased through a business partner. I suddenly wondered if that had been a lie too. I walked inside without knocking. Mom jumped. Dad looked startled. Olivia froze. The expression on her face lasted less than a second. But it was enough. Guilt. Pure guilt. My blood turned cold. Emma, Mom asked nervously, "What are you doing here?" I looked directly at Olivia. "How much?" Nobody answered. "How much money did you steal using my identity?" Silence. The room became deathly quiet. Dad stood up. "Now wait a minute. How much?" Olivia's face turned white. And in that moment, I knew. I absolutely knew. The investigator had been right. The debt, the loans, the mortgage, everything. It was her. My little sister had stolen my identity. And somehow my parents knew about it. The realization felt like being stabbed. Not once. 1,000 times. Mom immediately began crying. Which told me everything. Innocent people don't cry before accusations are proven. Guilty people do. Dad rubbed his forehead. Olivia stared at the floor. Nobody denied it. Not one person. That hurt more than any confession could have. Finally, Olivia whispered, "It wasn't supposed to get this bad." I nearly collapsed. Because hearing those words meant I wasn't imagining anything. This was real. Every horrible suspicion. Every nightmare. Real. "What did you do?" She swallowed hard. "It started with one business loan." One business loan. I laughed bitterly. A hysterical laugh. The kind people make when they're too angry to cry. $987,000 isn't one business loan. Mom stepped forward. "Honey, please listen." "No." My voice echoed through the house. "No, you listen." For the first time in my life, everyone became silent. I looked directly at my sister and said the words she'd never heard before. "Tell me the truth." Olivia started crying. And what she confessed next would destroy my family forever. Olivia's hands trembled as she sat down. My parents looked terrified. For years, they had protected her from consequences. Now there was nowhere left to hide. "It started 6 years ago," Olivia whispered. "I needed money for my boutique." I stared at her, the boutique that had failed after 8 months, the one my parents claimed investors had funded, apparently not. "I couldn't qualify for a loan," she continued. "So Mom gave me your documents." The room spun. I looked at my mother. She immediately broke down. I thought it would only be temporary. Temporary. Identity theft, bank fraud, forgery, nearly $1 million. Temporary. I felt physically sick. Dad finally spoke. "We thought she'd pay everything back." "With what money?" Nobody answered, because there was no answer. Olivia had never paid anything back in her entire life, not debts, not favors, not mistakes, nothing. The truth poured out over the next hour. The first loan had been $40,000, then dollars another, then another. Every time a business failed, they borrowed more. Every time creditors demanded payment, they refinanced. Every time things collapsed, they dug deeper. And because the accounts were under my identity, the banks kept approving them. By the time they realized they couldn't escape, the debt had exploded, nearly $1 million. "What about the house?" I asked. Olivia lowered her eyes. "Mortgage is under your name, too." I felt my knees weaken. A luxury home, 4 bedrooms, swimming pool, gated community, the house where Olivia lived, the house everyone thought belonged to her, legally. It belonged to me. Or rather, the debt belonged to me. I stood up without another word, without yelling, without crying. I simply walked out. For 3 days, I ignored every call, every text, every voicemail. Then I hired an attorney, a very good attorney, the kind that charges enough money to make criminals nervous. When he reviewed the evidence, he looked shocked. "This isn't a family dispute." What is it? Multiple felonies. The next month became a war: fraud investigators, federal agencies, bank records, forensic accountants. Signature experts, everything. The evidence was overwhelming. Olivia had forged documents. My parents had knowingly supplied personal information. Together, they had hidden the fraud for years. Then came the phone call. Mom was sobbing. Stop this. I sat silently. Honey, your sister will go to prison. The first time in my life I didn't feel guilty, because prison wasn't the problem, the crime was. Mom, I said calmly. Did anyone worry about me when you destroyed my credit? Silence. Did anyone worry about me when I was almost held responsible for $1 million? More silence. Did anyone worry about me? She hung up crying. 3 months later, the charges became official: bank fraud, identity theft, forgery, conspiracy. The family secret was finally public. And suddenly everyone who had defended Olivia disappeared. Funny how that works. When consequences arrive, supporters vanish. The biggest shock came from the banks themselves. Because once investigators confirmed I was the victim, something unexpected happened. The debts were removed from my record. Every loan, every credit line, every fraudulent account, gone. My credit score slowly recovered. My name was cleared. For the first time in months, I could breathe again. Meanwhile, Olivia's life collapsed. The Mercedes was repossessed. The house entered foreclosure. Her fake businesses were exposed. Former friends disappeared. Investors sued. Creditors lined up. Everything she had built using lies crumbled, exactly as lies always do. Then came sentencing day. My parents sat behind her crying. Olivia looked smaller than I had ever seen her, not because she was sorry, because she was scared. The judge reviewed years of evidence, years of deception, years of fraud. Then he looked directly at my sister. Victims often expect betrayal from strangers. Courtroom became silent. But betrayal by family is among the most devastating crimes this court sees. Olivia began crying. The judge wasn't moved. Neither was I. She received prison time, not decades. But enough to finally experience something unfamiliar: consequences. Afterward, my parents tried speaking to me. I politely declined. The truth was simple. I didn't hate them. Hate requires emotional energy. I was simply done. 6 months later, I bought a small house, my house, using my own money, my own credit, my own future. The closing day felt surreal. As I signed the paperwork, I remembered sitting in that bank office, terrified, believing my life was over. Instead, it was beginning. A year later, my business expanded, then doubled again. Ironically, the publicity surrounding the fraud case brought me new clients. People admired that I had fought back, that I hadn't stayed silent, that I refused to carry someone else's crimes. One evening, I received a letter from Olivia, the first communication since sentencing. Inside was a handwritten apology. 6 pages long. For a moment, I considered reading it. Then I placed it back into the envelope, unopened. Some apologies arrived too late. Some bridges burned beyond repair. And some debts can never be repaid. Not with money, not with words, not with tears. I threw the letter away, then walked onto the porch of my home. The home nobody could steal, the life nobody could fake, the future nobody could borrow. As the sun set, I realized something. The bank had been wrong. I never owed $987,000. Olivia did, and for the first time in her life, she was finally paying the bill. The end.